This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sheila North. Janet Stewart is away. It was an emotional day at Winnipeg's International Airport today. Hundreds of Afghan refugees arrived ready to start lives in Canada. The federal government chartered a special flight that brought them here this morning. Ottawa has committed to resettle 40,000 Afghans in Canada. So far, just over 17,000 have arrived. Karen Pauls has this report.
Can't wait to hold my nephews in my arms.
Syed Najib Amin flew from Montreal to Winnipeg to meet his two young nephews. 1 year ago today, their parents were killed in Afghanistan as they tried to flee the Taliban.
Because it's the 26th of August, for our family was a very bad day, and now it turns out to be a very good day.
About 115 of the refugees will stay in Manitoba. The rest will be flown to other cities. The logistics immense.
We've been expecting this charter flight since July. It kept on being postponed. And it hasn't been easy at this particular moment of time, knowing that we have Ukrainian coming as well.
120 of the refugees are children, 38 from a progressive high school in Kabul, renowned for educating and empowering young women. They knew they'd be targeted by the Taliban.
I don't know how can I explain it. It's something like now I feel so safe. I'm here and I can go to school, and I think that's...
Amidst all the relief, though, there is a lot of concern for people left behind, especially those who worked for the Canadian military. Listening to the Taliban's communications, warning of attacks, they and their families are being hunted down.
There are so many left, in almost 4,000 to 5,000 people in Islamabad and thousands and thousands in Afghanistan.
We're only identifying this man as Ali because he was one of the interpreters working for Canada.
Please, the process should be fast, and please save the lives of Afghans who are stuck in Islamabad and stuck in Afghanistan.
This charter is the 14th to Canada so far in 2022. This parliamentary secretary says each flight is good news.
I think if it was a matter of will, there would be 40,000 Afghan refugees here already. But as we mentioned, the reality is that in every step of the way, there's been obstacles that we are facing.
Can I go inside?
Finally, Amin's family comes through the doors. The reunion emotional.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
This may be the end of their dangerous journey, but for many, new challenges are about to begin in their new life. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And two protest camps on the grounds of the Manitoba legislature are defying an order to leave. At noon today, an eviction deadline came and went. The province says the encampments can't stay there due to safety concerns. Mary Starr is with the camp on the east side of the grounds. That camp was set up to honor children who died in residential schools. She says they aren't going anywhere, despite the wishes of the government.
Keep making laws, doing everything they can to get rid of us. Put us back in those communities. They don't want us around. Is it not right?
Some temporary foreign workers are alleging unfair treatment and verbal abuse at Elkhorn Resort in Ononol. One of them says he was wrongfully terminated. CBC's Peggy Lam has the story.
Okay. Michael Flores now cooks more at home, but he used to prep dishes for the Elkhorn Resort as a line cook.
I came here for my family because I know there's a very good future for my kids.
The Filipino foreign worker says he was fired last month for standing up to his supervisor, the head chef. Flores says his job started off well in 2020. He was even promoted during his first year. But he says things changed last December after he asked about having more staff on a night shift.
And suddenly he was like, you know what, Mikey, thank you for your all hard work. You can go home to your country. Then I was like, what, chef? Are you trying to fire me? And then he was like, yeah, thank you. And then I was shaking, I was crying on that time.
Elkhorn Resort says Flores was let go because of a change in attitude and poor behavior. It says he had 9 incident reports written up about him, which he disputes. Flores' friend, Jillian Robertson, works there as a server. She says she witnessed the head chef yell at foreign workers in the kitchen. Robertson says he has temper tantrums.
He lashes out towards the employees that are on shift, and it makes it a really hard work atmosphere for everyone, right? Because as servers or even the housemen, if you're in the kitchen at the same time, everyone kind of feels the negative energy, right?
CBC spoke to 3 others who are former or current employees of the resort. They all say that they've been belittled and yelled at by the same head chef. But Elkhorn's general manager, Chris Phillips, says that there's never been an HR complaint about him.
I don't really believe that he operates that way. I believe Chef is very fair. He has a great track record in his previous jobs.
Diwa Marcelino is with Migrante Manitoba. This year, he says he heard complaints from 4 different workers about the resort. He says the issues happening at Elkhorn are common.
We hear folks who are being threatened to go back or to be sent back to their country of origin, like being sent back to the Philippines during the pandemic. We hear folks not being paid overtime wages. We hear people talking about they've received discrimination or they've been yelled at by their bosses.
Elkhorn says these issues are not happening at the resort. As for Flores, he says the fear of being deported is behind him. He got his permanent residency last week.
Finally, the storm is done for me because I get the permanent residency so that I can work to whatever I want because the treatment there, yeah.
Flores says his next step is to soon bring his family, his wife and 3 kids, to Canada. Peggy Lam, CBC News, Erickson.
Here are the latest COVID-19 numbers from the province's weekly report. For the week of August 14th to the 20th, the report says 12 more deaths have added to Manitoba's pandemic total. That's a smaller increase than the 14 deaths the province reported in last week's update. 60 people were admitted to hospital with COVID-19, down from 79 the week before. 8 were admitted to intensive care units, down from 19 the previous week. And kids aged 5 to 11 are now eligible for a COVID-19 booster shot in Manitoba. We speak with the director of Children's Hospital Emergency Department about that. It's coming up at 6:45. And the Prime Minister has now confirmed the appointment of the first Indigenous judge to Canada's top court. Justice Michelle Obonzoin officially joins the bench of the Supreme Court of Canada next Thursday, September 1st. She has expertise in the areas of mental health, privacy and employment law, as well as human rights. Obonzoin is Abenaki and was born near Sudbury and is fluently bilingual. She's Justin Trudeau's 5th appointment to the Supreme Court. And 2 Winnipeg mayoral candidates want more funding flowing to grassroots safety groups, but they have different tactics. The CBC's Sam Sampson explains.
Winnipeggers are thinking about safety this election, and 2 mayoral candidates promise new ways to put the power of change into community-led groups. Robert Falcon-Wallet promises to freeze the Winnipeg Police Services budget during his first term. He'd then put the scheduled increase into a fund. Community groups who have crime prevention programs could apply for grants through that fund. Based on City Council approved criteria, they'd get the money. So for example, this year, the police budget rose by $7 million. If Wallet were mayor, that money would go to community groups.
The goal is to ensure that there's more innovation in trying to solve crimes. Because I think what we've been doing hasn't been working. Because we've been investing more and more and more and more and more, and the police budget seems to go up and nothing seems to change.
Wallet says police could apply for that funding as well if their programs meet council criteria. The police budget currently makes up almost a third of the city's entire budget. Now the catch with Wallet's promise is the vast majority of that budget goes towards salaries. Those are controlled by union agreements, something the mayor and council cannot directly control. Wallet also wants to have a community review of the police board. He also wants police to have more racial bias training. The service does require new recruits to have training like that. Meanwhile, Glenn Murray also wants to give more money to community groups. His plan is to build affordable housing on vacant lots, then use the increased property tax from those and funnel that into community organizations.
Today is about a whole list of actions that are not mine. They come from many other people. They came from listening to people in the community. We figured out how to put them together. This starts within the first 100 days that I'm mayor.
Murray couldn't say how much that plan would cost or how the housing would get built, but he promises more info on that soon. He also wants community safety groups to have a direct line to police And Murray wants committees of the city to focus more on addressing gang and drug houses. Finally, mayoral hopeful Rana Bakari says she wants to improve life for Winnipeggers 65 and up. So that includes things like creating more accessible infrastructure, think wheelchair-friendly paths, improving Transit Plus, and creating more senior-focused library programs. Many of these promises don't have specific price tags attached yet. The candidates say they'll have more robust financial plans later on in the campaign. They better act fast. The election is October 26th. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Winnipeg.
There are 14 candidates running to be Winnipeg's next mayor, and election day is getting closer. So we wanted to check in with someone who is watching this race closely. Erin Moore is an associate professor in the Department of Political Science at the University of Winnipeg. Erin, I want to start by asking you what stood out so far for you during this mayoral race?
Well, obviously the number of candidates and particularly how many high-profile candidates there are running. This is very unusual even when there's no incumbent. I've also noticed recently that a lot of the candidates are talking about they'll focus on partnering with the nonprofit sector and volunteerism this time around. I think that's indicative of the financial situation the city's in.
Right, and there's no incumbent this time. How does that affect the race?
Well, I mean, it makes it wide open. Incumbents have quite an advantage in municipal elections because, I mean, although we do have media coverage in Winnipeg, typically at the municipal level, we don't get as much coverage and people don't have a lot to go on when they're making a vote. So they tend to vote for the candidate they're most familiar with, which is usually incumbent. In this case, you know, we don't have one. So that means a lot of individuals that chose to not run in the previous election see an opportunity to win this time around.
And what issues do you think are going to be particularly important to Winnipeggers when they're casting their ballots this time?
It's always hard to tell what's going to be important with the electorate. In last election, the media was talking about Portage and Main, but you know, the issue of crime became the dominant issue towards the end, in part because of the crime statistics that were released at that time. I think crime will be another issue this time around, but it could be many different things that end up resonating with the public.
And have any of the candidates stood out to you for any particular reason this time?
So far, it's hard to distinguish too much from them. They're obviously all slowly releasing their platforms. There's a lot of overlap, I think, between what the candidates are offering to voters right now. And that will make it, I think, difficult for voters to determine who they're going to vote for.
Right. And you mentioned earlier that you're noticing that candidates are talking about partnering with volunteer programs. Why do you think that is? And what do you think that's going to do for the next administration?
Well, I think there's two main reasons for that. One is, I mean, some of the issues the city's facing, such as, you know, high incidence of drug use in the city, problems with poverty. We know that a lot of these nonprofits have effective programs to deal with it, and so the city's in a position to help them. That should help overall everyone. I think also, though, even though candidates aren't really talking about it yet, the city has very significant problems with its finances, and it's not in a position to do a lot of things in terms of throwing the money around in order to address issues. So I think they're starting to talk about, you know, these partnerships and volunteering because that's a way for the city to try to do something without spending a lot of money on these issues.
Okay. Well, thanks for your time today. That's very useful, and I will be watching out for sure. That's Erin Moore. He's an associate professor at the University of Winnipeg.
Thank you.
CBC weather specialist Fiona Odlum, Fun Friday Fiona, I call her, is back with our weather forecast. How are you?
I'm well, and
Good.
you know what? This forecast I have for you is pretty fantastic for a Fun Friday with Fiona. Let's take a look at this amazing viewer photo that was sent to us from Winnipeg. This is from Tom Armstrong. He was kayaking near Provencher Boulevard. This is fantastic. Thank you so much, Tom, for sending that in. All right, so right now we're sitting at 26 degrees. We got to our daytime high of 27 today. We are expecting some rain in our forecast, and And we've had so much rain this year. I just wanted to take a quick minute to talk about the crop report, because this time last year we were so worried about droughts and how we were going to be watering animals and cattle. Well, this year, because of all that rain, a very different story. So from the province of Manitoba, they're saying that pasture growth has slowed, which is good for this time of year, and that cattle feed supplies is good. So that's another great thing. Dugouts and sloughs are 70% capacity in the southwest region, and in the Interlake and Eastern regions, they're nearly full. So this is really great news, even though some farmers aren't going to be too happy with what I have to tell you next, and that's more rain on the way. I know we are in that harvest season. So we're going to watch this low push up. Now, it is going to bring significant rain towards the Cottage Country Zone, Kenora, Red Lake, Fort Francis. That's the area that's going to see the rain mostly tonight. But right now in Saskatchewan, there's a lot of rain, and it has been in that severe thunderstorm warning and watches, and that has brought rain into the Flin Flon region. As we look in towards the weekend, we watch for another wave of rain. This is mostly going to be happening Sunday into Monday, widespread scattered showers, and this is going to be a consistent theme throughout the weekend. Rainy, sunny, rainy, sunny. So this is our our storm energy, and there is enough energy here, especially in the Interlake region, where we could possibly see some thunderstorm activity over the weekend. So we need to be really careful as we're venturing out onto those bodies of water. So tonight at midnight, 20 degrees, partly cloudy. Around 4 o'clock in the morning is when we start seeing that rain arriving to Winnipeg. So that'll be our issue. This is for 7 o'clock, 17 degrees, light rain. We're looking for less than 1 millimeter of rain in this system. As we get towards lunchtime, 22 degrees, looking for a daytime high of around 28 for our Saturday. So we do have 28, 29 for Sunday. It's going to warm up as we look towards Sunday. But now we're starting to see that increase in rain. So we're looking for about 5 to 10 millimeters of rain, very scattered throughout the afternoon into the evening. This carries over into Monday with 24 degrees. I can't believe this is the last weekend of August. But don't worry, it warms up. We're going to see that sun returning for September.
The weather update is brought to you by Home Equip, your trusted local source for Pride Mobility scooters. From sales to rental and repair, our team is here to serve you.
As we head to break, we want to remind you to subscribe to our CBC Manitoba YouTube page. Your latest headlines are on there, and we are also now posting the entire newscast so you can share them, catch up, and stay connected anytime. More news after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Welcome back. The president of Ukraine says the world narrowly escaped a radiation disaster yesterday when electricity was cut to Europe's largest nuclear power plant. Vladimir Zelensky blames Russian shelling for sparking fires that disconnected the plant from the power grid. Power is needed for cooling and safety systems at the plant, and backup generators had to be employed. The plant has now resumed electricity supplies to Ukraine, but Zelensky wants Russian troops to vacate the site. Russia blames Ukraine for this week's outage. And the Ukrainian city of Mariupol was the scene of some of the most prolonged and intense fighting in the war so far. It's now controlled by Russia. The Ukrainian defenders who eventually surrendered have become prisoners of war, and there are growing concerns about what will happen to them. Information about the soldiers is scarce, and there are worries they could be accused of war crimes and subjected to show trials. CBC's Susan Ormiston has more.
I call this souvenirs from Azovstal.
Vladislav Zhyvernok defended Mariupol to the bitter end. He lost an eye and a leg from a Russian anti-tank rocket.
This is what took your eye out.
It's a part of this rocket. This, the smallest part, was in my eye.
His leg was amputated with a Soviet saw and stitched up with fishing line while he was still deep in a bunker in the Azovstal steel plant. The brutal siege of Mariupol, months long, ended when Russian forces surrounded the plant and forced the fighters out. Many in the Azov regiment, accused of neo-Nazi and far-right roots, but now part of Ukraine's National Guard. They were bussed out of Mariupol, prisoners of war with little word since. Zhyvernok shares fears his fellow fighters could be executed or paraded as part of Russian show trials. I'm sure they will, he says, because Russians work on their domestic audience to convince their own citizens that we are criminals. It's very important for them. They love to do shows. Recent photos of cages, allegedly for prisoners, fueled concerns that show trials will be staged within days at Mariupol's Philharmonic building. The UN has said that could constitute a war crime.
Where do you think Ilya is now?
I don't know exactly. I have only rumors, and all the rumors are so uncheckable.
Ilya Samoilenko, taken from Mariupol, was last heard from 3 months ago. His mother, Alla, is campaigning to help free the Azov fighters.
What do you fear could happen to your son?
Everything. It's very difficult to live with it. If I know that my beloved boy is in such ugly hands.
The Azovstal fighters who tried to hold Mariupol have mythic status in Ukraine. In Russia, they call the regiment Nazis and terrorists.
All their words is a lie.
He's pressing for a prisoner exchange for the others. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Kyiv.
Ukrainian refugees in this country are watching the developments there closely as the war passed the 6-month mark this week. And there were gatherings to mark the 31st anniversary of Ukraine's independence from the former Soviet Union. One of them was at the hotel in St. John's, which saw about 150 families come for a special dinner. About 100 refugees are living at the hotel while the government looks for suitable housing arrangements. They talked about what it's like to be far from Ukraine and trying to build a new life.
I cannot say it's a celebration. It's just respect, showing the respect for my country.
Ukraine was very divided. When I see that's now all united, and for example, people from eastern sides of Ukraine understand me. They understand now. I want to cry.
We've been pressured in the housing market for some time, but we have reception houses and reception apartments. So when people come to the country as government-assisted refugees, that's where they stay initially. But more and more we're utilizing hotels because we don't have enough. The volume of folks coming in is quite high. We're supporting right now over 600 Ukrainians that have come to this province. And there are probably still over 100 staying in the hotel.
Like most of the people, they look at that feeling, you know. It doesn't matter what you have, like which facilities you have around you. The more important if that place where you live that give you that feeling that you are at home. So everyone looking for that feeling, and I'm one of them also for that.
Moderna is suing Pfizer and BioNTech for patent infringement in development of its COVID-19 vaccine. In a statement released today, Moderna alleges Pfizer-BioNTech copied its mRNA technology developed years before the pandemic. The company says it is seeking damages in both the U.S. and Germany, but it won't seek damages on sales to 92 low and middle income countries covered by COVAX. That's the World Health Organization's program for global vaccine equity. Pfizer says it will vigorously defend against the allegations. Moderna's vaccine has brought in more than $10 million in revenue this year, and Pfizer's about $22 billion. And there are more details about the documents that were at the former U.S. President Trump's residence in Florida. The Department of Justice released parts of an affidavit related to the FBI search at Trump's home this month. Benji Heyer now on what we did and didn't learn.
It's 38 pages in total, the contents of which shed more light on the reasons behind the unprecedented search of Donald Trump's property earlier this month. The affidavit outlines how the Department of Justice had, at the time, probable cause to believe that evidence of obstruction will be found at the premises. It also states that Mr. Trump already turned over 15 boxes containing 184 classified documents, including 25 files marked top secret, some of the most closely held, sensitive records of the US national security. Several of the documents were covered in what appears to be the former president's handwritten notes. But much of the affidavit, some whole pages even, is redacted, blacked out, with the DOJ citing the need to protect the integrity of the probe, as well as the safety of civilian witnesses and law enforcement personnel, such as the names of FBI agents. Multiple media organisations had requested the publication of the affidavit, given the level of public interest in the case. Found attached at the end is a letter from Donald Trump's legal team claiming the president had absolute authority to declassify documents and control access to information bearing on national security, essentially arguing his actions are not subject to criminal sanction. Trump has since complained that the redacted affidavit amounts to a public relations subterfuge by the FBI. One of his loyalists, Republican Congressman Andy Biggs of Arizona, posted a screenshot of a heavily redacted page and condemned what he called an unacceptable lack of transparency. The current president, Joe Biden, was asked on Friday whether national security had been threatened by his predecessor. He replied, "It's up to the Justice Department to determine that." The investigation is still ongoing. Benji Haya for CBC News, Washington.
The Prime Minister hosted the Secretary General of NATO today at an air base in Cold Lake, Alberta. Justin Trudeau and Jens Stoltenberg talked about the Russian threat to the Canadian Arctic.
Understanding that Russia is an increasing concern to all of us makes it timely for us to share with the Secretary General and with NATO all the things that Canada is doing through NORAD, but also independently to make sure that we're protecting this region.
Russia has set up a new Arctic command. It has opened hundreds of new and former Soviet-era Arctic military sites, including airfields and deep water ports. Russia is also using the region as a testbed for many of its new novel weapon systems.
Stoltenberg thanked Trudeau today for promising to modernize NORAD, the air defense system operated by Canada and the U.S. California is launching a pilot project to install solar panels over some of its canal systems. The idea is to lessen the reliance on existing power grids and utilities, which are seeing a lot of demand because of climate change. And if the pilot project is a success, it could eventually see millions of homes get their power from renewable energy and conserve millions of liters of water.
So if we implemented solar canals statewide across the 4,000 canals, we estimate it could produce 13 gigawatts of renewable capacity, which is roughly half of what the state of California needs to meet their renewable capacity goals to have carbon-free sources of electricity by 2030. First of all, covering canals with solar panels would reduce evaporation, so we could save water. Secondly, it would avoid land use. Thirdly, it could, by shading the canals with solar panels, it would reduce aquatic weed growth. And lastly, there's a cooler microclimate. So water heats up more slowly than land, and this could enhance the efficiency of PV electricity production.
We have 250 miles of canals, and so if this is something that works on these first 2 miles of Project Nexus that we're doing, there's the potential that this could scale, and this could scale to multiple locations.
CBC weather specialist Fiona Odlum is back after the break with her look at the Manitoba forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
UBC engineering students are all hands on deck prepping this autonomous sailboat for a voyage across the Pacific Ocean. She is the sailboat known as Ray, standing 20 feet tall, bearing 2 sails that will help them course through more than 2,300 kilometers of ocean water, departing from Victoria to Maui, Hawaii, with no captain aboard nor navigators guiding her from afar. The sailboat was designed entirely by students and took 6 years to build.
We really want to push the limits of engineering and push the limits of the marine industry, right? So autonomous technology is super in right now.
But the UBC Sailboat team had a turbulent history with Ray's predecessor, Ada, which they launched in 2016 from Newfoundland en route to Ireland. Ada made it 800 kilometers before a severe weather storm hit, and she drifted off course a third of the way in. She wasn't spotted again until after a year and a half off the coast of Florida. Ray is roughly the same length as Ada, but is slightly wider, which will give her more stability to weather the Pacific Ocean currents and hopefully arrive in Maui in one piece. The team says they still consider Ada a success because of the many lessons they've learned since.
Everything that we're doing for Ray and for our subsequent projects is built off of that first step. Having kind of unfinished business with a full ocean crossing is a real driving force behind Ray.
It's really testing our design and testing how well we were able to build a robust system. So if she ends up in Japan, she ends up in Japan.
But students who also worked on Ada are rooting for Ray to make it.
I want to see the headline that Ray has made it to Hawaii. I think that would be a testament to the ingenuity of the students.
And when Ray embarks, they'll also take to heart a bittersweet sign of encouragement from her namesake, naval engineer and innovator Ray Montague.
They sent her a letter and received a very nice response from her, and then possibly a few months later she actually passed away. It's nice that this project can live on with her blessing.
Ali Patarga, CBC News, Vancouver.
I love that story. I wish I could sail to Hawaii too, but being here is nice too. It's really warm for the end of August.
I can't believe that we're at the end of August already. I kept saying it all day on the radio, and I actually asked viewers to send in their best August photos, and you didn't disappoint. This one was sent to us by Caitlin from Ildishane. She said this is just the pond in town, and they've been producing some pretty spectacular sunsets here. Now, have you ever heard of the catnip days of summer? Susan sent this picture in of her cat enjoying the outside and just loving the catnip out there. And of course, today is International Day of the Dog, and Courtney sent us this sensational photo at the dog dock in St. Andrews. Ugh. That belongs on a calendar, like for real. Okay, current conditions. We're at 27 degrees at the Forks. That's the same in Selkirk, 25 in St. Laurent, 27 in Eli. As we look a little broader, 27 in Swan River, 28 in Barons River. And a little cooler as we look towards Sprague and Emerson. Get ready for some rain coming towards you. 18 degrees in Churchill, 29. It's pretty toasty in Lynn Lake, one of our hot spots. Well, we're looking for a bit of rain to start pushing in. We're going to watch here in that southern zone, that rain going to come up, and it is going to bring widespread showers in towards the Kenora area. Expect shower activity tonight and on and off tomorrow. The big rain, though, is coming a little bit later, and it's this system here. Now, it starts to come and it breaks away a little bit, but then it expands, and you can see exactly how widespread it is. Now, in terms of the bullseye of where all this rain is going to be, it does start to break up a bit, and it does change quite a bit. So let's look at some of the numbers that we're looking at. Churchill is substantial with 29. Yours is quick tonight into tomorrow. But then keep an eye on Thompson as well and into the Paw. You're going to see significant rainfall of about 33 millimeters of rain. In towards the southern region, not quite as much. We do see a little bit of shower activity today, tomorrow in Winnipeg. Dauphin looks like you're going to get a big drink of water. And even Gimli, you're going to get about 10 millimeters of rain. So tonight, we're looking for about 14 degrees in Red Lake. Just a partly cloudy sky, pretty tame for you overnight tonight. Actually, a little bit warmer than seasonal. Looking for a chance of rain in Winnipeg, 60% chance of rain in Steinbach. We're going to continue to watch that rain be an issue through Brandon and Morden. And then as we get a little further north, I want you to remember we still have 12 wildfires in the province, and local smoke is a problem for Flin Flon and Thompson. That'll be an issue tomorrow, But remember, we have lots of rain coming your way. As we look towards that southwest corner, it's going to be very toasty tomorrow and those scattered showers throughout the day. And we're going to continue to see the rain peppering throughout the afternoon. And it's going to be a little bit soggy for our Saturday, Sheila.
Thank you, Fiona. Yeah. And as we head to break, we want to remind you again to subscribe to our CBC Manitoba YouTube page. Your latest headlines are on there, and we are also posting the entire newscasts. Catch up and stay connected anytime. More news after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. This week, the province announced kids aged 5 to 11 are now eligible for a COVID-19 booster shot. With back to school just around the corner, we're checking in with Dr. Karen Grip to ask some of the questions parents might be wondering about. She's the medical director at the Children's Hospital Emergency Department. Thanks for being with us, Doctor.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So what do you want parents to know about the COVID-19 booster shots for kids?
Well, the short version, it's a really, really good idea. Low risk and potentially high yield. We know that fall and winter is the prime time for kids to spread viruses to each other. They're going back to school, they're sharing things, kids will be kids, and the more we can protect them, the better. My spiel for COVID vaccines would be very similar to the influenza vaccine and even some of the other vaccines as well. Strongly recommend.
Okay. And there are families who may still be hesitant or have chosen not to get the COVID-19 vaccine for their kids. With school about to start and people soon to be spending more time indoors, what's your advice to parents and caregivers about that?
Mm-hmm. So two questions there. One is advice about the vaccine, and the difficult thing is that it is a personal choice, and there are many reasons why parents would choose to either put off the vaccine or decline the vaccine. The good thing is that by vaccinating the majority of the population, that does give some herd immunity, and that does protect others who are not vaccinated either by choice or not vaccinated because they cannot be for health reasons. What's also important to remember, what parents can do, what kids can do, is remember that hygiene is such an important part of things. One thing that we've learned in the pandemic is that masks help, but so does hand washing. And so does keeping to yourself and not sharing things as much as possible. Disinfection of surfaces can help. Certainly in the hospital field, we wear masks and wash our hands and clean our stethoscopes much more often now. So just the basic rules of hygiene go a long way.
And what about masks during the school times? Do you still recommend that? Do you know if that's going to be a requirement again this year?
I haven't heard that it's going to be a requirement, and I suspect it won't be. It really will be an individual decision, right? Again, a parent and a family decision. There will be many children who would benefit from wearing a mask. We know that masks help prevent transmission of the COVID virus. It helps prevent transmission of many other viruses as well, influenza and RSV and rhinovirus and everything else that's out there. And there are some children who will be especially benefited by wearing a mask. It will be important, though, I think, as a society, as parents, as a school, to make sure that we normalize mask wearing as much as possible. And that will be important because kids can be cruel and can make fun of others, and they don't mean to, but it's as their maturity increases, they can also understand that some people do things for a reason to help them stay healthy, and that will need to be something that we as parents and as a society can communicate to the children. If that's the choice they make, we should support it and understand why that's happening.
Okay, we got to go, but quickly, do you recommend and do you encourage people to get their children's vaccinations up to date on everything else?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Influenza is really one of the big, somewhat optional ones. The other routine ones are so very, very important. But influenza and COVID vaccine this winter will make a huge difference. We're seeing huge volumes in emergency right now as the viruses reemerge. And anything that an individual person and family can do to help mitigate the spread of these many viruses would be enormously helpful.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Grip. Dr. Grip is the medical director at the Children's Hospital Emergency Department. Thank you.
Thanks.
Still ahead, your daily lift, and CBC weather specialist Fiona Odlum is back with your 7-day forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at our extended forecast. So we are looking for tomorrow for 28 degrees, less than a millimeter of rain in Winnipeg, overnight low of 16. Seasonal for this time of year is usually around 23 degrees as a daytime high and 10 overnight. So we are well above that. Warming back up again on Sunday, our overnight low almost at 20 degrees. Looking for rain again on Monday. But as we say hello to September, my goodness, we're going to see lots of great sunshine on the way. And that is really great news for farmers because they really need those crops to dry out. So this is a good forecast.
Yes. Before we go, pet therapy is key to relieving stress for many hospital patients, but it isn't just for people seeking treatment.
Now at a hospital in Vancouver, it's also for the healthcare staff. CBC's Yasmin Gandam met up with the Pooches who are bringing a little peace and calm to frontline workers.
Ready? Now, good boy!
Smiles and laughter as nurses and hospital staff pet their new furry friends, taking a well-deserved break from their demanding work. Even though this program has been around for some time for patients, the pandemic has shown how much it's also needed for healthcare workers.
It's signaled to all of us that staff and providers need extra support, extra care, little extra attention, and we recognize how difficult it's been for them. Pet therapy is just one small way that we're able to say we recognize how challenging it is for staff.
This is hi. Come say hi.
The idea came about when staff were asked what they wanted for Christmas. They all had the same answer: dogs.
We don't find much opportunity for quiet in this job. There's a lot of noise all the time and stimulation, and we're just a bit away from that for physically, but then also mentally. It just helps our brains to sort of quiet down.
McCormick says the pandemic has been especially difficult, taking a physical and emotional toll on frontline workers while straining the overall healthcare system. Time with these pooches allows them some rest and to recharge.
Nurses tend to give 100% of themselves to this profession, and it's really hard to pull them away from their job when they're at work. And as one of the leaders, my job is to help give them a little bit of a break, and having the dog there just really gives them that motivation.
The positive impact of the dogs has been visible.
If you see a caregiver coming off a really complicated situation on the floor and they're interacting, we can see a visible relief that can happen. We see smiling, we see laughter, we see snuggling with dogs, grown adults. It's wonderful.
The dogs visit staff at least once a week, and it's safe to say it's a treat for the healthcare workers here at BC Children's Hospital. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
Great way to end the newscast. Thanks for joining us, and that's it for me for this week. Fiona will be back at 11. Have a great night and a great weekend.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.